So in the last video, we talked about Ian Hacking's understanding of realism and anti-realism, and the question of whether or not scientific objects are real or whether they're just intellectual tools that we use to understand the world. I spent a little more time with him, and I think I've understood what he argues, whether or not I agree with what he argues. And here's how it breaks down. In the history, he draws a distinction between realist about theories and realist about entities. And that distinction ends up being crucial to him, as we'll see in a second. So Hacking is not a realist about theories, but he is a realist about entities. Meaning, in the discussion we had before about like toy models of the economy in the last video, he would not say that those models, those internal models, are real. But he would say that the things that those models represent does count as real. Example, electrons. Electrons are a real thing. And he makes a case for this using a sort of pragmatic or an experimentalist or what's the right word? A tool-like understanding. So as best I can tell, Ian Hacking believes that we can claim that something is real when we understand it as a tool. For Hacking, electrons become real the minute that we stop using electrons as a theoretical object and we start using them as something that we manipulate in order to understand further experiments. It would be ridiculous to say that you don't believe in a screwdriver because your theory told you that screwdrivers, you can't prove their existence. Hacking says the same thing. It would be ridiculous for you to say that electrons don't exist because theory tells you that electrons don't exist. Obviously a screwdriver exists, I use it to tighten in a screw. Obviously an electron exists, I use it to whatever, ionize argon atoms or something. So theory, according to Hacking, is never going to prove the existence of anything. We shouldn't be realist about theories, we shouldn't be realist about our internal models about stuff. But once we cross a threshold with a theoretical object like an electron, which used to be a theoretical object and now is a real object that we definitely believe in, we pass this threshold of understanding it as a theoretical object and we start thinking of it as a tool. And that's when Hacking believes we can start to think of it as something that actually literally exists in the world. Let's do another example. So for this example, I don't want to do an example that actually helps Hacking, but I want to do an example that hurts him. Electricity. We use electricity to generate photons, and we use those photons in this thing that lights up. According to Hacking, since we're using photons and since we're using electricity as an object that we manipulate as a tool, we can assume that it is a real thing. This is where I start to disagree with him, because yeah, sure, we can assume that it's a real thing, but there are so many different theoretical models to account for the existence of electrons of electricity and of light, that I don't know whether it's really fair for us to say we can be realists about electrons, given the fact that there's so many different possible explanations. Is electricity literally the flow of electrons as we sort of believe it to be now? Is it a field that moves through metal in certain ways that doesn't move through the rest of the universe in certain ways? The theoretical, it seems to me like there could be multiple explanations of what electricity is, just because we use it. And so we can't necessarily, I don't think, be realists about electricity just because we can use it, which seems to be his chief argument. So in an attempt to be charitable to him, I think what he would say to that. So say I say, hey, Mr. Professor Hacking, you say that we can be realist about objects because we can use them. And I say, but there's multiple different accounts of what those objects really are, so how can we say that they're real? I think what he would say to that is that actually it doesn't matter that there are multiple different accounts. We don't have to be realist about theory in order to be realist about objects. And let's think about that for a second. There could be two different ways to describe electricity. It could be fields, or it could be particles moving. There could be two different ways to describe heat. It could be the motion of molecules, or it could be the flow of caloric, for a historical example. It seems like what he would say to that is, and he even does give an example of how multiple different people in one lab can have two different models of what an electron is, but they can still achieve the same result experimentally. I think what we can take away from that is it doesn't really matter if a if we have different theoretical understandings of something. If we use it and we both get the same results, it must exist. So this is somewhat compelling to me, and I think I am in part a realist, and I haven't quite made up my mind, which is part of why I'm making this video. I think it does make sense to say that once we can use something as a theoretical object, whoa, shadow of a DJI Osmo on my face. Okay. It does make sense to say that we can use something as an experimental object, and if we can use it just like a screwdriver, we can believe that it exists. And reading him charitably, we could say, yeah, there's different theories of how screwdrivers work. Some people say it's electromagnetic, and some people say it's torque-tastic, and other people, like, there could be different theories of how screwdrivers work, but the fact that screwdrivers work means that screwdrivers must exist. I think I can concede that to him, and I think I can understand at least how he could be he'd be a realist about entities without being a realist about theories, and that makes sense to me at this point. And that's the channel title, so I'm gonna stop. So let's wrap it up. It is possible to be a realist about objects without being a realist about theory. Grants that that's possible because it's possible to have multiple different theoretical understandings of how an object works, and yet to simultaneously believe that despite those theoretical differences, the object still exists. Electrons probably exist. We can think of them as particles, we can think of them as waves, we can think of them all these different ways, but if we're using them to design machines like iPhones or whatever, if we're using them to design machines, then they probably are real. Maybe we don't fully understand them, but they probably are real. And they become real to us. They were always already like real, but they become real to us. It's proven to us that they're real as soon as we can use them as a manipulable object to achieve ends that we're interested in. I don't know whether it's possible to be a realist about objects without being a realist about theory too, but I can see where he's coming from, and that's the best that you can ask for when you're encountering someone totally new. Okay, cool. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one. Hey, thanks for watching. I kind of think the shadow's cool, so I'm leaving it in the shot. Next videos that are coming up, I'm going to be working on Collins, which is about a similar topic, and then I'm going to talk about, I forgot his name. Oops. And then I'm also going to try and cycle back to those Bell videos, because Bell's the one that disproved Einstein's understanding of quantum theory, and it's going to be worth time to understand him. All right, cool. Have a good night. Bye. Oh, subscribe. It's a new channel. I hate to ask, but you should subscribe. You should send this to some of your nerd friends, and hit the like button, because I would appreciate it. All right.